got on a soapbox and began preaching against comic books.
Born in Munich, Wertham had been the senior psychiatrist at New York's Bellevue Hospital, as well as the director of a low-cost psychiatric clinic in Harlem. In the 1940s, he began conducting his own studies into abnormal behavior in young people.
He went around from prison to prison interviewing juvenile prisoners, and one of the questions we asked him was, "What do you read?" Well, he discovered that all of them read comics. Ergo, comics are destroying our society.
I think he had a genuine concern for kids, which got out of control.
Wertham's assault on comics began in early 1948, and the anti-comic mood spread around the world.
Comic books were seen overseas as this virus of American culture and crime. Since they couldn't keep up with us militarily or economically anymore, they could at least try to fight against our culture.
In his 1954 book, Seduction of the Innocent, Wertham even attacked the Man of Steel, coining the term the Superman complex. Wertham defined the condition as fantasies of sadistic joy in seeing other people punished over and over again, while you yourself remain immune. Batman and Robin were like a wish dream of two homosexuals living together. Wonder Woman was the exact opposite of what girls are supposed to be.
He had the title doctor in front of his name, and people listened to him. He was a good huckster, got a lot of publicity, and it almost destroyed the comic book business. And a lot of people were saying, good riddance, if that happened.
In 1954, U.S. Senators Estes Kefauver and Robert Hendrickson held hearings on the effects of popular culture on young minds.
They were kind of like a B-movie precursor to the Army McCarthy hearings, which were occurring at right about the same time. And they were both about equally ridiculous.
When the Senate committee's attention turned to the evils of comics, Dr. Wertham was the star witness, with testimony like, "Comic books are obscene glorifications of violence and crime. Today's children have been seduced by Superman. And Hitler was a beginner compared to the comic book industry."
Every American saw us in this horrifically negative light. And then as an industry, we just bent over for the government.
Fearing government censorship, most of the major comic book publishers created the Comics Code Authority, a self-censoring organization that would issue seals of approval.
Everything that was published had to be sent first to this organization, and they had to put the seal of approval on it, indicating that the stories weren't too sexy, weren't too violent, and would in no way upset any young or older reader.
In their new code-approved stories, Superman worked closer than ever with lawful authorities. Batman and Robin spent more time with girls, and Wonder Woman hung out more with Steve. But superhero relationships stayed at the level of grade school crushes.
That instilled that belief in the American public that comics are strictly a kid's medium. I mean, we're still fighting against that stigma today.
The code also enforced rigid rules of conformity. About authority, it said, policemen, judges, government officials, and respected institutions shall never be presented in such a way as to create disrespect for established authority. About parents, it said, respect for parents, the moral code, and for honorable behavior shall be fostered. About ghoulish activity, it said, scenes dealing with Walking Dead, vampires, and werewolfism are prohibited. Many comic book publishers closed down. Many writers, artists, and werewolves fled the industry.
No respectable person wanted to be involved in that field. There are many stories of the comic book artists ending up in the alleys and basements of churches and ending up alcoholic.
And they did this right at the time when rock and roll was starting to break. That rebellious side of youth culture was becoming more pronounced in other media, and the comic book industry gave up that edge. They lost it, and in some ways they never quite recovered from that.
Between 1954 and 1956, comic book sales fell more than 50%. The industry would never again have the number of readers it had just before Dr. Wertham and the Senate hearings. The Comics Code placated enough of the public to save the industry. But what about the superheroes? Would they survive?
They were a dirty little secret that you read under the covers of your bed. They were the kind of thing that if your parents caught you reading them, you might get in trouble.